Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now. Today is an interesting one because we're trying a slightly different form of the stream, I guess, though that's probably only after we've covered most. It is going to be interesting how I manage it, so please bear with me. Beyond that, we do actually have a decent amount to cover in the Apple competition space, though there will be some Apple news coming in today as well. Beyond all that, I'm feeling pretty good. The weather is like 12 degrees cooler today, so a lot easier to breathe and to just enjoy yourself. I'll be pretty busy for the next 2 weeks. Some personal stuff, some work stuff, though mostly I'm probably streaming Monday or Tuesday. And on Wednesday, I'm probably not going to make the Samsung Unpacked event for the Galaxy Z Flip and Fold 7 and supposedly Samsung's first gen trifold. So if I still manage it, I'll of course let you know through the usual channels. You will see the YouTube notifications. If you click on those, I will inform you on Discord and on Twitter. That, though I'm not sure if I've actually posted on Twitter about this video. I'm not posting enough on Twitter to have any relevance there ever since my return. I vastly prefer the Discord that our community is building over there. I see Riley already in the chat. I know today is the 4th of July, so probably the US people will be busy with something else. So I wish you all a happy Independence Day. Shoot me some aliens up there. But beyond that, just the usual YouTube shout out for you guys. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Like the video, share it out with anybody who you think might enjoy it, and comment. Don't just comment live, also comment afterwards to help with the algorithm. Whenever you catch me live, consider leaving a super chat or a super sticker. Consider becoming a channel member. Shout out to Angelica, Max, Steve, and Jonathan, our Mark Jack Pro Max supporters. And you can also, of course, support us over on Patreon. After Apple's new deals regarding the 30% commission and whatnot, it seems like Patreon is somewhat good again. But YouTube is just a preferred space. Riley, you're definitely the king yapper today. Let me actually show you some of the news we're covering, including some of your favorite talk about chip semiconductors. And specifically, we are talking actually, unfortunately, about some disappointing stuff when it comes to Nintendo, when it comes to Intel pretty much failing with yet another node to attract anyone outside of Intel to actually use their foundries. So 18A is supposedly this big leap. They canceled 20A, right? Or they kind of merged 20A into 18A. 18A is basically 20AP, right? Or 20A, but actually with backplane power delivery. Because, it was always a little bit unrealistic that they are going to make backplane power delivery work like 2 full years before TSMC. Sounds like they will be about 6 to 9 months ahead or something like that. That being said, we obviously don't know about the actual density, the raw performance, and the efficiency of the technology and how it's going to play out. Right now, it looks like it's going to be pretty competitive with TSMC 2 nanometer. But anything can happen, right? Plus, of course, if it's only going to be used by Intel technology, it's going to be actually hard to compare it to like TSMC's nodes or even Samsung to a degree, because at least Samsung has like the Nintendo Switch 2, I guess. And they had Tensor chips for their 4 nanometers, and now they will have Exynos back, but Exynos is Samsung. So, but Intel is only going to have Intel to adopt their 18A node. So we won't be able to tell how much efficiency comes from the node, how much is going to come from the new Panther Lake architecture and things like that. But let me actually get into the nitty-gritty of this report. So obviously Intel has a new CEO. They fired Pat Gelsinger. I still don't quite understand why. I never liked Pat Gelsinger, but he was not the problem for Intel, right? Like, Intel is the problem. There is such a point that no matter how much money you throw at something, or you hire even new people, which even that doesn't quite work, because already, of course, a lot of foundry developers and chip developers, they are working already. Intel, Nvidia, TSMC, Samsung, right? Not everyone can just magically switch to another company and be equally as good there. A lot of great engineers also accumulate a level of expertise with a specific technology, with a specific platform, with a specific foundry process. So even if Intel hired away some of the best TSMC engineers, it wouldn't guarantee actually that they would deliver the same kind of quality at Intel, especially if Intel is not willing to invest as much into their own foundries. So basically, according to this article, they call it a more aggressive approach with the foundry division. Honestly, I think that's slightly misunderstanding. And he reportedly cancels the glass substrate project that Intel has been working on. So there will be a lot of restructuring and changes to the original roadmaps. Of course, those have been said by Pat Gelsinger, including his promise of, like, what was it, 4 nodes or 5 nodes in 3 to 4 years, right? Basically like a super ambitious thing. Like TSMC gives you, if you consider like their P nodes, their plus nodes, right, their performance versions, a separate node, then yeah, TSMC gives you roughly a new node every year. But honestly, it has come down to a new node needing basically 3 years, maybe in some cases 2 years. But usually that will actually be a smaller increase. Like, for example, from 2 nanometer to like, what is it going to be, like 16A? That's supposedly only 2 years with N2P in between. But 16A or A16, I believe TSMC just switches the A and the number versus what Intel does for it to not sound exactly the same. Yeah, I believe that A16 is a much smaller upgrade than, for example, than N3 is over N5, or N5 was over 7 nanometer, right? We are in an era of diminishing returns. Riley, you haven't gotten over your hate for Intel 14 nanometer. The problem is that I think the one thing that Intel 14 nanometer showed is just how good Intel's architecture was for that time. When initially 14 nanometer came out, and they kept on refining it, because let's not forget, they didn't also not from the ground up change their CPU architecture too much, right? It took them up until Intel 12 gen to really like be super modern. But when you look, for example, at the 8700K, the 9900K, right? Those chips performed really well, considering that at that point they were in an outdated node. Obviously, the efficiency wasn't there, and especially versus ARM chips, but Intel still had something to offer, which is their chip architecture was genuinely better than AMD. That's not the case anymore. At best, you can claim they're roughly on the same level as AMD. Some wins, some losses, right? They don't have an answer right now to AMD's X3D technology, but roughly they seem to have somewhat better clock speed management, stuff like that. Probably a bit better efficiency, though that's hard to compare because Intel now has some 3 nanometer chips, TSMC by the way, versus AMD being still only on 4 nanometer. Yeah, but I fully understand why that's the case. And obviously, if you have like it depends a little bit on the system. It's fine for the CPU to run hotter than the GPU. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. Like roughly around 100 degrees Celsius, I think a lot of like enthusiasts started worrying for no reason, and I think basically because it was triple digits now, and oh my god, water evaporates at that temperature. Yes, but we are working with silicon, not with H2O there, not with aqua. the problem is overall, like, yeah, of course, in a laptop, temperatures don't just mean oh, the chip is hot. What will that mean in like 10 years, as some people pretend to worry about, like Apple Silicon? No, in a laptop, super hot temperature, especially if it's not like kept to a small part of the chip, that's just going to result in noisy fans. Obviously, if it also comes with extremely high power consumption, that will result in low battery life. If it's a system that's just poorly constructed, then you won't be able to reach your peak performance in battery stage. You will only be able to do that in docked mode. So plugged into the wall. I use docked mode because I have been watching some Switch 2 coverage by Digital Foundry. But yeah, basically 18A was supposed to be their hot shit, right? It's their GAFET node. It has backplane power delivery. It has supposedly a very competitive density to TSMC's upcoming 2nm node. And supposedly it's basically better than N3E in almost every way. With N3P, it opens up some questions, of course. Is it going to be very clock speed competitive? But those are details, right? 18A looked pretty good on paper, and that's why a lot of people were saying, oh, finally we're actually going to get some competition. And the competition was actually not like, we don't need competition for Apple Silicon, right? We already have AMD building SoCs. We already have Intel building SoCs. We already have even NVIDIA soon trying to bring out an ARM CPU plus NVIDIA GPU SoC, right? There is plenty of competition against Apple. There's Qualcomm, there's MediaTek, there's now Xiaomi. The actual competition we needed was for TSMC, not even necessarily to make TSMC better, because let's be quite honest, TSMC is basically as good as it gets in many ways, but we needed something to push TSMC prices down, because they've been very aggressive in increasing prices with every node, and sure, those new foundries, those new factories are very expensive, but we also know that their profits are very, very healthy. Obviously, 18A has been delayed, though it is a little bit questionable because technically 20A was canceled. So is 18A technically a delay? I mean, before that, something like 20A was delayed. So yeah, I guess everything has been delayed to a degree. But because of the quality of the node and everything we were fed to believe, we expected that Intel 18A would be a very good node for Intel's Panther Lake architecture that's coming soon. But even more importantly, we expected that it would be competition for TSMC and either push TSMC to even higher highs or, and even more importantly, I would argue, push TSMC prices down. Seems like that's not happening. So a few details. First, now in a report by Computer Base, the firm will also use an external customer for glass substrates, abandoning its in-house efforts. So when it comes to just building the latest technology, Intel is like not as self-reliant as they would like to be. That's actually been a bit of an advantage of Intel in the past versus TSMC. Like TSMC buys technologies for, Intel does and Samsung does and basically everyone does, especially when it comes to like the core, like laser actually engraving the transistors. That's putting it in the most stupid terms. There's like a Swedish company making those technologies for that. But yeah, Intel basically wanted to have glass substrate technology for their future nodes. Seems like they're going to do that now through a third party rather than building in-house. But that's a very small detail. That's a detail in execution. That's not an actual change of plan. Intel has a massive lead in glass substrates since it has been developing the technology for several years, becoming ahead of the industry. However, it is claimed that Intel wants to reduce its operating costs and focus on core business like CPU and manufacturing. In fact, that's the only core businesses left. They try GPUs. they kind of still make them, but let's be honest, the only relevant Intel GPUs are the integrated GPUs into their SoCs. They have a sub 1% market share of the dedicated GPU market for DIY PCs, and I believe close to zero market share when it comes to pre-builds. They tried stuff like SSDs. They obviously tried stuff like modems, which they then sold off to Apple. I guess they still make Wi-Fi modems, but even there, their lead is diminishing. Seems like with Wi-Fi 7, everybody's coming out at around the same results. Maybe Intel has still slightly better range than something like MediaTek, but it's not gonna be enough, right? It's just CPU and manufacturing for them. Given that the market opens up opportunities for glass substrates, Intel would likely opt for external sourcing, indicating that the firm is determined to trim down its operations by canceling projects that aren't considered worthwhile. Intel basically has no cash pile whatsoever at this point. They burned through all of their resources. Their stock is not in a great position. So some might say, well, isn't this an investment into the future? Sure, but if you go into extreme debt to upkeep a certain amount of people working on a new technology and then creating new factory space to create like glass substrate technology by yourself, right? That might not be worth it long term. So this is like very cold-hearted, very business thinking, but overall it is somewhat understandable. What seems to be not understandable to me, unless 18A is not actually as good as it seemed, or their production capacity that they have been eyeing is so low that it just makes no sense to sell it to third-party customers. One of the more critical updates that came earlier is Intel's decision to reduce the influence of its 18A process in the market by scrapping external sales of the process to potentially lower the operating costs coming from the foundry division. This certainly doesn't mark the end of Intel's processes, as Team Blue is determined to integrate it with internal products. Yeah, sure, Panther Lake, Clearwater Forest, so including their server stuff. But the prospects of 18A seeing adoption from the market look to drop down. And basically, they believe that 14A will change that, which is now like the fourth time I've heard that. I've heard that Intel 7 will be a hit with third-party customers. I heard that Intel 4 nanometer will be a hit because it's so refined and so much cheaper potentially. Like 3 nanometer is basically a continuation of 4 nanometer for TSMC. It's basically a complete lie as a node. It does nothing to compete with TSMC's 3 nanometer. And then 20A was the initial promise, but then it was kind of turned into 18A. And now we are basically at number 4.5 as a promise, or 4.75 even, of 14A being supposedly the node. And even that, importantly, is that it would require a massive external volume for Team Blue to actually make the node available for external adoption. So this is a bit of a chicken and egg thing, right? If third-party customers don't start lining up for 14A, Intel is just going to build enough 14A for themselves. And by the time maybe somebody warms up a little bit to 14A, for one, it's not going to be cutting edge anymore, but also questionably is what will happen with TSMC's cheaper nodes, right? Because it's not just going to be, oh, Intel switched to 12A, so 14A is now cheap. If 14A was always built in small capacities, then it doesn't matter. People would choose rather like TSMC 4 nanometer because they know it has high yields, they know it will have way lower cost. And for certain products like IoT stuff and somewhere below mid-range smartphones, you would probably never target such a node in the next like 4 or 5 years. So yeah, this is you just don't know what needs to happen to turn this around, save of like Apple going to Intel and saying, you know what, we actually want to build on your node, right? Can you please increase the capacity for it? It is safe to say that the future of Intel's foundry business is looking uncertain for now. That's nicely putting it. And we do await an update for Team Blue on the ongoing rumors, but Intel's new CEO clearly stated in the past that the firm needs to make difficult decisions. So, yep, there's... is that actually new? No, that's May 14th. Okay, so apparently this has been building for quite a while. 18A and 14A have limited customer commitment. Foundry division to achieve break even by 2027. This number keeps getting pushed back and back. If they really make a killer node, who knows? But even then, there's a big question of what is actually the profitability if they scale it up, right? If they only build it for themselves, then they can kind of compute like, oh, if we sell the processor at a 20% profit, but blah, 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 right? The foundries are roughly break even, so we can actually keep that money rather than having to instantly subsidize the foundries. But if that's not happening for years and years at this point, then how much money are they burning? And will they consider potentially selling off their foundries? Or will they consider being saved by like the US government, which might partner with Samsung or TSMC to like adopt a certain percentage of Intel and then actually like co-develop their technologies? Is there a chance M5 going to be 2 nanometer? Not by current rumors. I still have my bet running with you guys. What was it? Was it $100 or was it $150? That I said that would be given to charity if by the end of the year we don't get a single Apple chip built on 2 nanometers. So expect like a stream from me around the Christmas season or something like that, because I will be holding out until the last minute. But yeah, seemingly we are not getting 2 nanometer this year from Apple. Though there is, well, M5 is supposedly coming out in October, right? And it's part of what makes M5 special here is that M5 seems to be targeting a huge number of production, like a huge production number, with the main idea being basically where Apple is going to use 5 nanometer M5 and 3P with it, basically on the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro. They're probably going to refresh iMac, Mac Mini, right? They will finally probably make like an M5 Ultra Mac Studio or something like that. Whether it's coming in November, you mean 2 nanometers coming in December or M5? Because M5 to me still seems very logical that it's just going to be a late October, early November launch, like what we've saw with previous things. If it's a month from 18, then probably no 2 nanometer. I think it doesn't matter how much away it is, unless it launches in May or June of next year. The reason why M5 is not 2 nanometer, from what I understand, is that they wanted to put into their servers and their familiarity with FinFET nodes, with 3 nanometer, with just refining the architectures and the nodes that they already have, plus 3 nanometer being noticeably cheaper than 2 nanometer, I think that Apple will want to experiment for their own factories with a node that they can immediately push out in high numbers, right? That's different with 2 nanometer, because if they launch 2 nanometer, even for consumer products this year, all the capacity would go to those consumer products, right? It would delay their attempts to push it into their servers by like 5, 6, 7, 8 months, which you might not argue how much that is in terms of time. However, there's been recently a rumor, and recently, I mean yesterday, that Apple might have actually planned yeah, Riley's not just trying, he's succeeding, Benveni, for now to be ranked number 1. But there was a rumor that Apple was actually partnering to make a competitor to Amazon's AWS or to Microsoft's Azure or to Google's cloud business. And basically Apple, this is coming from The Information's Aaron Tilley, just a shout out when it's deserved, right? And supposedly that the idea behind that is that Apple is so confident right now in their M series class of chips, especially their efficiencies, that they believe cost-wise it would make sense to make their own servers. And if it actually turns out really well for them, because don't forget, Apple is, no matter what, building their own servers, whether we are looking just at cloud stuff. Now, when it comes to basic cloud storage stuff, they're probably pretty fine, relying still on Google and Amazon. But the more they build out stuff like private cloud compute, Jesus. Tailosive Tech just posted a video saying that the next iPhone is going to be big. I mean, yeah, I'll look into it, Benveni. You guys know Super Chats pretty much guarantees some reactions from me, but I'll think about it. Let's actually finish that piece of rumor. Guys are funny. So, a service like this allows developers to power cloud-based app features without purchasing and maintaining their own servers. So here, the advantage of Apple putting their own M-class chips wouldn't just be, oh, it's cheaper for us than doing an Intel chip. They could actually offer like remote Mac servers and Xcode compute helpers and well, if they really wanted to, they could even lend you a server space for like Hollywood-style productions. Basically, you might have like one Mac Studio or Mac Pro for your main project, but like so many files that need to be edited on and stuff like that, and need to be color corrected and everything. That could be handled by the server, considering if your workflow, of course, is actually optimized for Mac apps and stuff like that. So, Apple executives believes that the power efficiency of M-series chips would make its cloud service more affordable. I'm not sure what the impact is, for example, from the fact that M-series does not support hyper-threading. Plus their chips are really, really big. I'm not sure if Apple might actually consider creating a server class core. Or not their chips are big, I'm sorry, their cores are big, their performance cores are big. Or they might even consider using their E-cores. So the exact implementation would actually be very interesting. Or they might just take M5 Max chips and just interconnect them. Who knows? The belief is apparently backed by Apple's own use of the servers for the like of Apple Music and Apple Wallet. So you can already see Apple has been steadily pushing some server tasks away from Amazon, away from Microsoft, away from Google, onto their own stuff. I don't think Apple would be doing it unless it had real benefits, especially when it comes to cost down the road. Sure, it might cost more for Apple to build that server farm, but then just maintaining it will ultimately be so much cheaper than the cost of renting AWS or Azure space that Apple would basically be financially better off. The other advantage, and I know that some of you don't like AI talk very much, but if Apple creates a lot of compute in the servers, because I bet they would have also some GPUs in there, and don't just make it CPU servers, they could kind of for free still also double utilize those servers for stuff like private cloud compute, basically enhanced Siri and everything else like that. Plus, they could use it to also train their large language models, of course, right? Apple is not great at data collection. That's partially what makes them really good in my eyes. They just don't collect as much data. But let's say they buy a huge chunk of data from Amazon or Google or Facebook potentially, and they feed it into their their development of LLMs. Well, it's obviously better to have like servers to just crunch those numbers really quickly rather than do it with like 8 to 20 interconnected Mac Pros and Mac Studios. Now, I know Apple already has servers for all of that, but if you know what the computational needs have been for AI, then you know that it's basically never enough. I mean, even like very progressive companies like Google and Microsoft have stepped back from some of their more ambitious environmental goals by saying, oh, you know what, AI is going to consume so much energy, we might have to still get some reliance on coal power plants and stuff like that. Oh, and we would actually like to solve nuclear fusion, right? Because that's going to be an infinite energy source. Yeah, it's basically a very complicated thing, but down the road, and this is especially if Apple's secondary plan here, which is to potentially actually sell those services, similar to how they currently purchase services from AWS, from Azure, from Google Cloud, then it actually becomes interesting, because if Apple's servers are so efficient, potentially, right, a lot of server stuff mostly runs on somewhat older Intel technology. Obviously, AMD has been delivering a lot of great server tech in recent years, but even in the best case, that's tech that's currently on some version of 3 nanometer. When we're looking at Zen 5C, which the cloud version, but that's nothing in efficiency compared to Apple's use of 3 nanometer plus ARM architecture, plus their deep optimization that they will be able to do here. Plus, of course, the benefit that I've already mentioned, which is to offer actual Mac services. They would need to build those server farms mostly on Mac OS. Now and this is purely speculation. Now, for something like iCloud storage, right? Or even hosting Apple Music, I'm actually not sure if Apple would feel the need to build this based on macOS, right? But definitely if they actually offer you like, oh, this is like an Xcode helper, oh, this is all the Siri stuff, right? Everything else can probably still rely on like Linux servers, because I'm not sure what the exact state is of macOS server versions right now. Apple used to build macOS around server usage. They even built a PC for you in that regard called the Xserve, but I'm not sure if this is still something they're pursuing, or if they would be fine on building this mostly on Linux. So I actually made a really, really good segue between the first and the second topic. I don't have quite as good as a segue to the next topic, but speaking a lot about Macs and macOS, let's actually talk about the Macs M5 and M6 that we are expecting throughout this year and next year. So this is coming from Apple Insider, so I actually have a primary source open for once, saying nearly all Macs available new in 2025 feature Apple's state-of-the-art M4 chip, with the MacBook Air and Mac Studio receiving the new process hardware in March 2025. Important to note that the Mac Studio obviously got the M3 Ultra and the M4 Max, and the M3 Ultra is not, just by its name alone, it's not on the M4, but yeah, otherwise it's a correct point. Internally, however, Apple is already working on the 2 devices' respective replacements. Even in the practically forgotten Mac Pro is set to get a major hardware upgrade. So this is why now it's not this specific story, but it's broadly just Apple pushing technology forward and at least giving the Mac Studio some love. I really hope that they don't fully forget the Mac Pro, and maybe they will find some use with it. Maybe they can give it even more memory than 512 gigabytes. Maybe they could actually offer some form of expandable memory. That being said, that is purely speculative. Through our own data and information shared with us, Apple Insider has learned of 15 new Mac models currently in development. People familiar with the matter and common sense have told us that Apple plans to introduce its M5 chip within a matter of months, and that M6-equipped devices could see some significant changes in late 2026. Now, Riley, you asked about M5 being on 2 nanometer and that being pretty unlikely. M6 is basically guaranteed to be on 2 nanometer. Apple product identifiers follow patterns, so it's easy to figure out which identifiers belong to which future Mac. It should also be, of course, noted that Apple could follow the exact release timeline of M5 then with M6. as they did with M4, right? But there is nothing to suggest that maybe M6 could come out much earlier next year than M5 is coming out this year, right? So Apple could still be the first customer for 2 nanometer as it ramps up production later this year and then becomes basically available for mass usage in Q1 or Q2 of 2026. So it's not guaranteed that M6 would be, it could be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be limited to late 2026. So the following Macs are expected to be released in next year, though exact release windows mentioned in this report are based on rumors and my personal speculations. Jesus, they wrote so much about this. That's padding. That's bullshit. As the current M4 Pro Mac Mini is known as J773S and J837S, is likely an M5 Pro variant of the Mac Mini. Okay, so we are basically starting here with a Mac Mini sequel because of a code named available as J873S. So apparently 73S is the ending here for the Mac Mini, and J8 is logically the successor to J7. And J773S is for the M4 Pro Mac Mini. So that would point to an M5 Pro release. That is somewhat encouraging because, of course, we didn't get Mac Minis based on every Apple silicon generation. We skipped one. So there is now a chance that Apple might actually subscribe to annual or at least very regular updates for the Mac Mini, hopefully for the iMac. In fact, yes, we do have an iMac identifier here as well, J833CT. The current iMac being known as the J433. So whether or not that this means this is just a chip replacement, M5 versus M4, or maybe some other variant because of the CT stuff, will be interesting. Along with those base M5 Macs, Apple is expected to introduce the MacBook Pro with M5, M5 Pro, and M5 Max, which the leaks identifiers line up with. So we have J714C for M5 Max MacBook Pros. We have 14 and 16 identifiers in the name for the size. And what's their predecessor named here actually? So the current one, so the 7 just is basically a sequel to the 6. Okay, so it's interesting. We got a rumor not too long ago that Apple tried to make like ultra chip variants of their laptops. That's seemingly not happening here. So they are sticking with most up to M5 Max. Now that doesn't mean anything, of course, because M5 Max, for all we know, could be twice the size of M4 Max. Don't really expect that, just saying. One report says that M5 Pro and M5 Max will use 2.5D packaging that has separate CPU and GPU designs and which will improve production yields and thermal performance. So TSMC's latest chip packaging process named System in Integrated Chips Molding Horizontal, SOICMH, puts together different chips into... It's interesting how many names of different packaging tech I've reacted to on this channel. Basically, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not against separating CPU and GPU if they're still interconnected in something that's very low power consumption, that's very low latency, and that's very high performance. But we've obviously seen that when you connect two fully separate dies via interconnect, as we've seen with M1 Ultra, M2 Ultra, M3 Ultra, right? it doesn't scale perfectly, so I hope Apple avoids those pitfalls. Now, I know this technology is completely different from the packaging technology of the M1 Ultra, M2 Ultra, M3 Ultra, so I'm not saying it's going to be subject to those limitations, but it will still have some limitations versus just putting them on the same die. The M5 MacBook Pros are expected to launch roughly the same time as the M5 iPad Pro, M5 Apple Vision, so that's at the end of this year. Desktop Macs are getting upgrades too. We're also told that there's a new Mac Pro in the works with a codename J704. Now, judging by what I've just read, that would lead me to believe that the current Mac Pro is J504? Because we did not get an M3 or M5 version. We only got M2. But it hasn't been updated 2 years. Oh, they don't actually mention the code name for the M2 Ultra, for the Mac Pro. That's a shame, because that would have proven if my logical deductive reasoning is correct or not. It's also not a blah blah blah. They just complain about the Mac Pro, which I fully understand, but that's neither here nor there. My hope is that the Mac Pro actually comes out a lot sooner than many people expect, or I think that it might just be the death knell to this category. Most people will just choose to go with the cheaper Mac Studio. Sure, it doesn't have like storage expansion, but you save $3,000 up front, and you have like a smaller space taken up on your desk. So yeah, for now, I don't see much of a reason to go with Mac Pro. Certainly not with the current Mac Pro. So, but maybe if they make an M5 Ultra version, who knows? We have also learned 2 new Mac Studio configurations are in development, J775C and J775D. So J575 Mac Studio is either M4 Max or M3 Ultra. Oh, that could actually lead me to believe that maybe the M2 Mac Studio Mac Pro might actually be J4 J404, right? Yeah. So basically like 3 generational jump, because Apple does skip numbers if they skip certain advancements, which is interesting that they gave this the same naming, even though obviously the M4 Max is on a more advanced architecture than the M3 Ultra. The company is said to be experimenting with chips much more powerful than the M3 Ultra, and the Mac Studio would be a logical choice for the new chip. So we've talked about like M2 Ultra times 2, right, in the past, or M Ultra times 2. So basically having 4 M Max dies, or having completely different solutions now that would be based supposedly on the new packaging tech, right? So maybe if you can fully disconnect the CPU and the GPU from something like the memory controllers, which actually stuff like this becomes really big on like high-end workstations and server class chips. So that, and since that stuff is what scales the least with new nodes, it could actually make sense to have the CPU and GPU to actually be like forward-looking 3 nanometer, 2 nanometer, and then the rest of the die be constructed of an older node, 4 nanometer, 3 nanometer, something like that. Again, I'm not reacting to all the like rumored release dates, because they're not really based on anything. The MacBook Air could get the M5 in early 2026. That's, of course, if it follows the release of the M4 and the M3 MacBook Airs. Is there a code name for it? Apple Insider was told that the new MacBook Air configurations will bear 2 device identifiers, JA13 and JA15. That's basically the 13-inch version, the 15-inch version, and the current versions are J713 and J715. Late 2026 should see the debut of a redesigned MacBook Pro. We've talked about, of course, it getting technologies like tandem OLED, the redesign, my hope is that it would get like something like PCIe 5-speed storage, but that's neither here nor there. That's very speculative. It's been rumored, blah blah blah. They also mention all of this. We were told that Apple once again plans to offer 4 high-end MacBook Pro configurations, M Pro, M Max chips, and then in the different sizes, and the numbers would actually switch from a J based system naming to a K based system naming. So Apple probably deems this redesign as worth giving it like a new generation of product names, basically. And then there is Apple's A18 Pro MacBook, which there are 2 unreleased Mac configurations here, J700 and J804. So the J804 sounds similar to a Mac Pro, but apparently it could also be a low-end MacBook Pro, and they don't quite know what J700 is. But yeah, either one could potentially point to this new, cheaper MacBook in the lineup. We've discussed it in prior streams, the potential for a $700 MacBook Air or a MacBook Air that's not a MacBook Air, that's just a MacBook, and that would be powered by an iPhone class processor like the A18 Pro. Now, speaking of iPhones, boom, the transition game is on point today. Supposedly, we know the battery capacity for the iPhone 17 Pro Max, which is obviously the highest battery capacity iPhone available. And that supposedly is getting a nice increase over the current generation, which is, of course, the 16 Pro Max. And, of course, an even nicer upgrade over the iPhone that I have, which is the 15 Pro Max, which has roughly the same battery capacity as the 14 Pro Max. We'll get to why I am bringing up prior generations here. Just gonna hover over given. That's, of course, compares to 4676 milliampere hours. And again, this is why this is like a rounded number. This could be 5027 for all we know, right? Or something like that. So while that's not a 10% increase, it gets close to that, 7-8% or something like that. But yeah, if you are one of the majority and you're not upgrading your devices every year, then you will get an over 10% increase here versus something like the 15 Pro Max, and even larger gains, of course, over the 13 Pro Max and 12, and then you get like to the abysmal numbers of the 12 Pro Max. Nerd saying, I think Google Pixel 9 Pro looks more clean. I will actually redirect you to a message that I've posted on our Discord, because I think it was you who said that, right? In the Discord, but. No, it was Ben Vinny. So basically, we've been talking about stuff like the Nothing Phone design, for example, like the Nothing Phone 3 looking weird, and why I am so against like random design shit like what's done in the Nothing Phone versus why I'm pretty non-adversarials to just different designs, right? So basically, and I'll just read it out, is what's important is that I generally never fight with people what design they enjoy. As long as I feel it was done with some genuine care, which I agree is the case for Pixel. I think Pixel has high quality build. There was some time when it was a little bit less quality, but it's gotten very good at this point. It's using high quality materials. It's using sensitive materials for the price that it's targeting, for the cooling and whatever else. The design is not to blame for the shortcomings of the Tensor chip or the years-long refusal to use vapor chambers, for example. And I think the visor looks unique and it looks pretty good. I am fine with accepting any kind of taste as long as basically those parameters are met. So it's high quality and there's some genuine care in it. What I hate is that companies like Nothing kept getting attention not for a well-constructed design that solves some deeper purpose or it just nicely differentiates it, but in a subtle way. No, I always believe their designs are just random shit slapped together just for the sake of seeming different. It was barely acceptable on the Nothing Phone 1 and 2, the Phone 2 of course being much worse than the Phone 1 in terms of design, because at least the Phone 1 had a somewhat subtle effect to its like transparency on the back. The Phone 2 kept adding random geometry to the back, which of course has now completely exploded with the Nothing 3 generation. But what always bothered me is that they clearly had no future beyond just random gimmicks and goofy designs. The gimmicks being that LED glyph interface and the goofy designs being yeah, the transparency, but not real transparency, and especially the random geometric elements to it. Google has actually something to offer to the hardware space. We saw that with how far ahead Pixels used to be in computational photography. I always bring up features like night mode pioneering on Pixels. And when Pixel introduced portrait mode, while it was more limited versus the iPhones, because the iPhone relied on its dual camera setup, the Pixel still did a remarkably good job for software effort, which the iPhone only introduced by like the iPhone XR series. And we also see other good Google stuff with, for example, how much real-world performance Google gets out of what I call god-awful tensor processors. So yeah, that is my opinion here. I do not actually ever tell people Android is crap. I tell them Windows is crap, but it's an operating system with how much old garbage it has accumulated. But I'm not telling people to not buy a Windows PC if, for example, they want to game or they want to their work requires a certain app. I'm not telling them buy a Mac and use it in Parallels or through crossover. I'm telling them, look, if you believe it's the most convenient setup for you to go with Windows, they're nice devices, but ASUS, by Lenovo, even Dell, right? And I say the same thing about Android. Some of you might like the super open nature of Android, the extreme customizability, the ability to sideload no matter in what region you live, right? And then I tell people, while Samsung has some of the most refined Android skins, Android devices offer better performance per dollar versus Samsung, and then Google gives you a very clean experience. In the past, you will note that I have praised devices like the HTC One M8, M9 series quite a lot on this channel for being one of the most beautiful smartphones ever created. So yeah, nerd, I'm not insulting you. Your name is Nerd World. But yeah, I fully understand why you might be drawn to the Pixel 10. Once they fix their chipset and the OS bugs, Pixel is better than Samsung? Yeah. Yeah. Do you think I would disagree with that? I'm not a huge Samsung fan. I like Samsung trying some new stuff like foldables, but overall, I have always rooted for Google to succeed. I have rooted for them to get out of the hardware market at only one condition, which is that they actually partner up with hardware companies like Samsung, but in my mind, it also includes companies that don't exist in the smartphone space anymore, at least not really, like HTC and LG, or even BlackBerry would be cool, right? We have Rosa joining the chat. Hello to everyone. Hello, world, to put it into Apple terms, right? So I fully understand that. And because I've been now speaking so much about Nothing, right? Let me actually react to a video here, which is from iJustine. Now, Mr. Who's the Boss made a pretty long video on the Nothing Phone 3 and how he's mostly disappointed in some of the choices being made here, but I really wanted to react to you guys with to iJustine because I think this video proves, and by the way, if you're a fucking misogynist and you want to see me shit on iJustine because she's a woman, go fuck yourself. I don't care about you, right? However, iJustine, and I've shit on her now on this channel 2 or 3 times a little bit, and one time a lot, she is very mass market. However, that also comes apparently with making a crazy amount of mistakes, which I don't like. You've seen me being very angry when Dave2D started having a lot more mistakes in his videos, because I actually respect him and I watch his videos. And when I saw him make like 2-3 mistakes per video, and sometimes not even fully like analyzing his own graphs, I was like really taken aback. Now with iJustine, my disappointment is way lower because my expectations are a lot higher. My expectations are a lot lower. Sorry, but still, this is garbage. Let's check it out.
Brand new Nothing Phone 3.
I'm currently in London for the Nothing Phone 3 launch event. They announced 2 new flagship Nothing Phone 3 devices.
So that's not true. They announced 2 Nothing devices, which is the Nothing Phone 3 and the Nothing headphones. The entire brand is not called Nothing Phone, as far as I understand. You can even see that here. It's Nothing. Unless she means it literally 2 Nothing Phone 3s, by which that would also be wrong, unless she counts the India variant as a second variant, because that one has 5,500 milliampere hours versus 5,100, or I believe 5,150 for the Western market. Now, it should be noted that it's still the same battery, so they're not using some breakthrough battery technology, but basically in the United States, if you ship anything above like roughly 5,200 milliampere hours, you're actually subject to different regulations because you are transporting dangerous goods, because the explosion of of a lithium-ion battery of that capacity can create some damage. It's similar to how you're not allowed to transport a single battery over the size of 100 watt-hours on planes. That's also primarily a US regulation. One might think that would be like something the European Union comes up with, but yeah, I also find these limits pretty arbitrary. Because this is basically putting a limit at like 20 watt hours and 100 watt hours. So they clearly chose just some nice numbers. Nerd World, I believe that in the long term, Apple is succeeding. Apple's chipsets, design, and overall control of optimizations are impressive. This is why Google is developing its own chips to compete. I fully agree. This is why Microsoft tried making devices like the Surface 2. Not the Surface TWO, but the Surface TOO, right? And Riley saying, iJustine just made $1 million+ with this short. Yeah.
And 2 colors of these new over-the-ear headphones.
Okay, so these look like garbage, but I know that has nothing to do with my channel. Like, I react to Apple tech and related technology. I could stupidly claim that, oh, these are competition to the AirPods Max. Let me react to this. Nah, this has nothing to do with my channel. I'm just reacting to the Nothing Phone 3.
Phones.
And yeah, Nerdworld, they all failed, right, in that specific approach. When you think about it, Samsung did fail objectively to make Exynos a full-on Qualcomm competitor, not just in the sense that it competes in raw performance, but they don't even implement it themselves, right? If Exynos was 5% behind the latest Qualcomm chip, I fully believe that Samsung would be using them because they would be just cheaper, right? Let's say 5% less performance, let's say, 10% less efficiency. I think Samsung would be using them, but they're not, and they delay them. Like, and by using them, I mean in the Ultra series, right? I know that the Flip 7 is getting like a long delayed Exynos 2500. That's not the same. And they put it into the base version sometimes, like the Exynos 2600 is rumored to come to the base Galaxy S26 devices. That's also not the same level of trust that Apple obviously puts into their A chips, into their M chips, now even their C chips. I wouldn't be surprised if we get like a rebrand of Apple's W chips at some point, right? Basically for Wi-Fi modems.
First up, let's check out these phones.
Okay.
They come in black and white with this new tri-column grid backplate.
Okay, so she's mentioning marketing words, right? There's no word here on if she likes it or how controversially it has been received by the community, that people are getting ripped new holes for liking this on the internet, or just for the fact that this camera is misaligned with this one, and they could have just made a triangle, like a regular S triangle with a 90-degree angle here. They did not.
The glyph lights have been redesigned into this new glyph matrix.
Okay, so it should be noted the glyph lights have not been redesigned. The glyph matrix has been... this is bullshit. So basically they had like those randomly positioned LED lights that blinked and everything. Now they have basically, what is it, 400 to 500 LEDs in this matrix. That's not a redesign. That's a complete rethinking, in my opinion.
Matrix for notifications, selfie camera preview.
Yeah, so that selfie camera preview, mentioning that without any skepticism, like people are literally laughing at it. Like I've seen some people say, well, it helps me frame my face so I know that I'm in the frame. Brother, how retarded are you that you just cannot hold your phone like this? The only thing I need from a camera preview is to know, like when it's simply a selfie, am I actually in focus, right? Now, this could work potentially for something like a group selfie, if the details are even there, but that would be like, you have like a long selfie stick, and now you're looking at this tiny LED matrix.
Timer, and fun little mini games.
Yes, it's fun because rocks, paper, scissors is the most fun game on the planet to play with your phone on a small screen rather than like what? There are like 1 billion web apps for stuff like this. I really don't get it.
To activate, you can press here to flip through the different games and options. And you can go into the settings to further customize these. Now, camera upgrades are always what I'm looking for, and this has 4 50-megapixel lenses. There's a periscope with a
Okay, this is correct. There are 4 50-megapixel cameras. That's one spec she's getting correct.
1.3-inch sensor.
Okay, so the periscope camera, first of all, I struggle to understand why we need periscope cameras for 3x optical zooms. Like, this is a 3x optical zoom, right? This is not a 4x, not a 5x, not a 6x. Pre-order and release dates leak. Okay, that's interesting. Let's look at the Nothing Phone 3. No thong. The no thong phone. Camera. So, periscope telephoto, 3x optical zoom. Yeah, which that would mean it's what, 72 millimeters. Which is obviously far away from like 110, 120, which is where Samsung and Apple are at. Mark, what are your thoughts on writing tools in the world of AI and smartphones? I believe this is very important. I believe that AI has value, especially for stuff like this. Like, for example, birthday wishes. If you really imagine writing birthday wishes to a person for 10 years in a row, right? At some point, you're going to run out a little bit out of fantasy, and you might not want to copy and paste something from the internet, right? So that's how you do it. Obviously, writing very formal, very polite emails and stuff like that. Just in general, having proper autocorrect for everything and proper grammar and proper spelling, that to me is very important. I think that writing tools is honestly one of the best use cases for AI, specifically because it's also something that can run kind of concurrent with what you're doing, and especially once you're thinking about like a 32 gigabytes of RAM Mac like mine, it can run on device, no question. It probably can run, as we know, on the iPhone's 8 gigabytes, but I mean like always running, always in the background, right? I think that such a use case is great. And my only question for it, my only hope for it, that I know is not going to turn out correct, is my hope would be that people actually use it to improve their language, to improve their capabilities, to write emails, to write letters, and stuff like that. I fear, though, it's gonna make people pretty dumb, unfortunately, and it's instead gonna result in people just entirely giving up on learning proper spelling, proper grammar, right? But yeah, I do not deny its importance, and especially I do not deny just how relevant it's gonna be in future years. Do you think Apple Safari design is copying Google Chrome design language? Yeah, maybe, but it's also completely insignificant because, like, we have had a browser layout that has been copied by dozens of companies back and forth. I think that people are just liking what they have. Now, is it very rounded? I mean, yeah, somewhat, but I would argue it's still like one is very recognizable, I would argue, as Safari, and the other is Chrome. Obviously, overall, some designs might kind of like coalesce into not one, right? They will still be distinct, but they will be somewhat similar. I always bring up like one thing that I'm not angry about. I'm just angry that people don't acknowledge it, which is Google kind of copying the multitasking or just the gesture interface from the iPhone 10, the UX behind it. Google actually had gestures before the iPhone 10, right? Because they had some phones that were already like taller than 16 by 9. We had phones that already gave up on a home button, especially since a lot of Android phones relied on like those LED touch targets, right, for the back gesture, for the back button and stuff like that. And what I found interesting is that people just don't talk about it, not that it's needed, but whenever they bring up like, oh, Apple is copying something, right? Yeah, but some things, for example, the reason why I'm not angry about Google copying this thing is because I genuinely believe that what they copied was the correct thing, right? And similar, if browsers end up looking rather similarly, I am not angry about that, no matter who copies first. Similar to the layout of the Google Pixel camera, it features a completely rounded design. This is why the Pixel considered a well-conceived phone, unlike Samsung. Well, it depends who you ask. Samsung's followers are not very loud on the internet. Those who are seen as like the extremes, like that guy, the Galax or whatever, right? Or I think his real name is Anthony or something like that on Twitter, who is a complete Samsung fanboy. Like, this guy is not representative of the broader Samsung community, but the Samsung community still likes Samsung. I think that the Google Pixel is highly regarded as part of for enthusiasts. If you actually ask the majority of people out there and ask them, well, does Google make great phones? I think a lot of people will tell you, wait, Google makes phones? Right? Unless they were like in the shop relatively recently and they were offered like a Google Pixel as an upgrade path or something like that. For example, my cousin was giving her husband a phone for his last birthday, and she got him an S24 Ultra. But she was checking out the website of her mobile carrier, and she was like, "What's this Pixel?" And I'm like, "It's not a bad product, but between the Pixel 8 at that point, right?" Yeah, I think. And the S24 Ultra, I just recommended the S24 Ultra, even if it was a bit more expensive. But let's actually continue with iJustine. So first, there is a periscope with a 1 by 1.3 inch. No, sorry, I actually said it correctly. No, my brain auto-corrected. My brain has AI writing tools built in. The periscope with a 1.3 inch sensor. And what's important, this is not a misspeak on her
That'll
part.
give you up to 60x AI super res zoom.
She put that in text and was fine leaving it like
Options.
that. I assume she has editors who should also understand probably a little bit about.
And you can go into the settings to further customize these. Now, camera upgrades are always what I'm looking for,
listen.
and this has 4 50 megapixel lenses. There's a periscope with a 1.3.
Yeah, so 1.3 inch, deliberately spelled out that way. So going back to the tech specs, this is not correct. For one, let's actually look at the actual periscope camera. It has a 1 by 2.75 inch sensor. That's smaller than what Apple uses for their ultra-wide, but slightly larger than what Apple uses for their current 12 megapixel telephoto. And Riley, you mentioned that this phone has no reason to be this expensive. You're absolutely correct. Now, $800 by itself for those specs wouldn't be terrible, but considering like the brand that nothing has been building, and considering the Chinese competition versus this is an S8 Gen 4, so this is a 4 nanometer chip, versus soon flagships like the OnePlus 14 launching with the 8 Elite 2 and probably costing about the same money, and previous flagships, which are still current on the market, like the OnePlus 13, being based on the 8 Elite and actually being now $100 cheaper. This has no reason to be this expensive. Nobody talks about poor OnePlus. I do. Nerd World, go to our Discord. I'm advertising it so much, but that's because I actually feel like it's actually gotten really good. Like the big contributors are some of the same you see on this channel. You see, of course, Riley yapping about. You see me. You see Jimmy James. You see Ben Vinny. But OnePlus. Here, basically, so when the current CEO of Nothing, who came from OnePlus, which is part of Oppo, right? Basically, OnePlus became so weakened internally that they couldn't keep up the development of their own skins. And they basically had to just absorb the Oppo skins, which are terrible. So, Nerd World, it's not correct. I will actually keep talking about OnePlus when they make, first of all, their recent hardware has been a bit questionable to me. I think it's a bit too expensive for what it's trying to be. I think always after like a small price reduction, the device feels right, but it never feels right on day one, just because the cameras are not on the same level, and you don't have the same trust in like long-term support by the software. Yes, Nerd, I actually agree. The main point about this is that they lost their identity, which when I remember the OnePlus 5, which actually in some ways competed versus like high-end OLED devices. Sure, it was worse. Its screen didn't get as bright. The cameras were worse. But it had a good battery, a flagship processor, a good amount of memory and storage for the pricing. A high quality build, which is also not very typical for that price point at that time. Yeah, I really missed this OnePlus. I would be covering them way more. And I don't even care that Oppo is bad. If Oppo makes a sub-brand that is better than Oppo Prime, then I will cover this sub-brand completely separately from my feelings on big Oppo, right? Just it's like for example, the Poco or Poco, right? There is sub-brand of Realme. I always forget. No, Realme is a sub-brand of something else, right? I don't care about that, right? I care about the final product, about it having some identity, and even about it, what I call a little bit is like pandering to the Western market. So much feels of it, especially about Oppo, but also about Vivo and definitely Xiaomi, is that they just take interfaces that were made for China, which includes a ton of just blatant copying and stealing from Apple, like a one-to-one copy of Apple's like a control center, one-to-one copying of Apple's settings panels, like with almost the same description, just with some words shuffled around. That's not how you're gonna, like, you will just look to the West as like a cheap alternative to Apple. Yeah, but yeah, I've been ranting, but I just want these people like iJustine to cover those things correctly, because otherwise it's just all gonna be a mess. Like, think about it. And this is actually, I believe, like my last news story here, except for Samsung, which is Apple actually is growing again in China. Now, sure, they had to play around with pricing, they had to play around with subsidies, but these subsidies are actually more available for their competition because they max out it devices that cost $820 roughly, depending on the of course the currency level between the dollar and the yuan. Wait, what? No, yen. Wait, Chinese yen? No, yen is Chinese yuan. Why? Yeah, it's yuan. Yen is Japanese. Yuan is Chinese. Don't know why I had to brain fart about this. But basically, so they are now growing. But when you actually look at the statistic, you will find that Apple's overall market share, right? Do they not have a table for this? I saw like Apple Chinese market share. Change to English. News. Apple Insider. Maybe they have it. Yeah, they actually have some other graphs, right? So the market barely increased at all, just 1% growth. Huawei, who are kind of downtrodden over the last few years, they have regained their status as one of the most important Chinese tech manufacturers again. You see, Vivo is big, but has some trouble sustaining that. And now Apple, you'll see, this is actually a decent amount of market share, right? So just trying to point out that trying to just be Apple but cheaper is not going to work for everyone down the road. Sure, a market like a company like Huawei or Vivo or Oppo, yeah, they might position themselves, especially in their home market, as especially because they can also pander a bit more to the Chinese market. They understand that market even better than Apple. But given how expensive Apple's hardware is, I would say this is a monumental success. And this is coming, like, yeah, sure, subsidies, but these companies sell a lot more devices under $820. So, but to bring it back to iJustine, so the periscope camera, she says, has a 1.3-inch sensor. Let's actually look into that. So it's not true. It has a 1.275-inch sensor. But more importantly, the main sensor for the 24mm wide is not a 1.3-inch sensor either. It's a 1 by 1.3. And if you know that makes actually, the larger this number is, the smaller the overall sensor. So obviously this is way smaller than a full 1.3-inch size sensor would be. A tech journalist should know that. You can misspeak, sure. It would be weird for you to misspeak that about the periscope, though, because any phones that actually has such a large sensor for the telephoto camera, those phones are actually positioned much higher in price, usually at the full $1,000. Right? But yeah, you can see only one sensor is even remotely close to the size she mentions. Everything else is like 1 by 2.76, 1 by 2.75. And even that main sensor is not the size she actually said. Is that the Steam client is Apple native on your dock? Yes, it is. In fact, I'll just gonna give you Activity Monitor. It's not just the Steam client itself that's actually native here, right? You'll see the kind Apple. I have New York Times as a web app, but that's basically Apple because it's running in a Safari wrapper. Plus, it's not a really demanding application, right? But if I sort it by CPU intensity in the other direction, so Windows Server, obviously, because we're doing a lot, but OBS is taking up the most. Vampire Survivors, a game I might play still today a little bit for you guys, but I'm not sure, right? That's Apple optimized as well. But then when you look at Steam, that's also Apple. That's the beta version. It's the second version of that beta release, and it's actually quite stable. It has some issues, which is notably if you click on minimizing the window, it immediately jumps back, right? So it doesn't let you go out of that. But since you probably are not keeping Steam at full size anyway, and you with something like Stage Manager, you can manage those windows quite nicely. When gaming is fully available on macOS, Windows will become obsolete. Roughly, yes. There will obviously still be some older applications and some 3D work applications, but I know what you're getting at, right? Because that day when all games come to macOS, this is also the day where every Blender-like app comes to Mac day one with full functionality and things like that. What games do you play on Steam? Well, let me finish up with iJustine, and I'll actually show you a game.
Inch sensor that'll give you up to 60x AI super res zoom, 104.
Okay, so that super res zoom, from everything that I've seen, it basically draws random lines to make it look a bit sharper.
14-degree ultra wide that doubles as a macro, and the regular flagship lens.
This is interesting because I've actually heard that the telephoto is actually the macro. Now, I'm not actually sure if there's also macro in the ultra wide, so we'll not call her wrong on that. Just put a question.
This also
mark.
has an upgraded selfie camera, which is 50 megapixels as well. And as for video, you're able to record 4K 60 frames a second. They also have a new action mode for video, which
Okay, so yeah, that was basically the main mistakes I was getting at. So let me show you my Steam library for a moment. I actually have a very small Steam library, but it has been growing specifically recently because, and I've told this story a few times on this channel, oh, Jesus Christ. What did I even do? Steam actually didn't work on my MacBook Pro no matter what I did, no matter if I installed an older version of it or something like that. I don't know if it's specifically the M1 Max MacBook Pro or something like that, but whatever was happening with it being translated through Rosetta or I know I often have beta versions installed, but I even tried it out with official releases. And yeah, basically I mostly play on my PlayStation. Then I play Apple Arcade games on the go, lighter weight stuff. In fact, Getting Over It is on Apple Arcade, but it's only on Apple Arcade for iPhone and iPad, and on Mac it's actually not on the Mac App Store at all. So this is this in this genre of notoriously difficult to control games. And I actually I know this might sound a little bit OCD on my part, but I actually only install stuff that is native Apple Silicon. Right? Sure, I will try something else for presentation, but I will never buy a game for money that is relying on Rosetta or that I would need to put into crossover. Because for those AAA big recent releases, I have my PlayStation. So The Witcher 1 and The Witcher 2 got native Apple Silicon games. It should be noted that this game crashes relatively fast. Classic Marathon just downloaded recently only to try it out. It's not my cup of tea, but it's very a classic boomer shooter, basically revived. I've mentioned Getting Over It. Obviously 3D Mark is a benchmark tool that I use on this channel for some stuff. Dave the Diver is one of my favorite releases. You see that I have 87 hours in it. Benvenu said you left for a brief moment. You missed when I talked about design language and talked about. And you know what's even bad? Usually I would tell you guys, oh no, don't worry. I'll just put timestamps on it and you'll just be able to find it. This stream is completely unstructured, right? I'm actually not sure if I'll be able to give you timestamps for this. So remember that now it's roughly an hour and 20 minutes into it. Maybe so around the 1 hour mark, you'll be able to rewatch this. Dave the Diver is one of my favorite games in recent years. I actually only played it because it was on PS Plus, and I believe I have around 100 hours on it on PlayStation. Yeah, so this is a highly played game. Vampire Survivors I bought on Steam for Mac, but I have most of my time played with Vampire Survivors actually on my iPad. So of course that gaming time is not gonna be in there, and I will be testing out new games. But I guess I can just look at the chat for a moment. So first, just for Mac gaming related stuff, by the way. So just to show you, this works as fast as it does with the PlayStation. So I click the PlayStation button, and it's 1, 2, 3, and it's connected. So when the light becomes stable, usually I should get a notification for it, but I assume because I'm in game. Nerd World saying Vampire Survivors is super addictive. Yeah, it is. And I always play it almost like half watching. I don't have the sound on because let me just go with the classic. Right, I've been recently trying to actually max it out once the game actually started having cross save. So I actually was able to move my iPad save to this, and that of course gave me more access to stages and stuff like that. Otherwise, I'm not sure if I would have bought it fully. Benveni saying you will watch what you missed out later. Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. Go to the laboratory. Yeah, but the reason why I cover all this stuff, right, is because I am genuinely interested in the overall experience. I don't like either one. I don't like either one. The Bible, yes, the Bible. But when it comes to stuff like design, right, to me, that's part of the experience. You touch the product, you get it out of the box, you interact with it. Obviously, it feels nice. Does the metal aluminum chassis feel cool to the touch when you first open up a MacBook box, right? But the reason why I dislike random stuff is because I know that down the road, it always just results in the same crap. It's going to be more and more random crap glued onto the product just so you could say, oh, we changed something, right? And nothing actually does that now in several ways. They don't just do that with those weird geometric shapes, and they don't just do it with the transparency or the glass back, but then everything else is glass, just not transparent glass. But they do it especially with those LED stuff, right? And my problem with that is, what will you do down the line, right? Will you add more LEDs? Will you just make them brighter? No, it just does not have a way forward. If it was a standalone feature that was actually well designed and they actually put some thought into sustainably improving it over years, right? That would be one thing. That's, for example, the regular LED flash, right? You can add other LEDs into it and make them brighter. You can oh, I actually think, is that glyph matrix actually LED or is that LCD dots? Right? I think it's LCD. Benjamin is saying, you have a 16 p.m. and sometimes feels bung and I will probably downgrade the size. Yeah, I've actually heard that because considering that, I mean, you will get a battery downgrade over a 16 Pro Max with a 17 Pro. That, of course, depends. You might wait until 18 or the 19 series. But part of the question with that is also, does it feel like now that the problem is you're talking about the 16 Pro Max, right? If you were talking about the 15 Pro Max, and especially something like the upcoming 17 Air, I would say, well, don't forget, the base model is now 6.3 inches, so you might not actually be that far off from the end experience with the screen size as you might have feared, right? Obviously, you got the first iPhone with a 6.9-inch device, so a 6.3-inch device will feel somewhat cramped for you. That being said, if obviously this feels too large and feels actually uncomfortable, then it's kind of a no-brainer. This is where the Air is a little bit disappointing because it has this like very nice in-between size of like between 6.5 and 6.6 inches, but you just give up all the pro stuff, right? The battery, the cooling. I mean, even if it gets a vapor chamber, just from it being so thin, it will not match the cooling of probably even the 16 Pros. Probably get close to it, which is going to be great in a thin and light, but still, right? It's going to be noticeably different. And when it comes to yeah, so obviously you also get other downgrades like cameras and everything like that. Yeah, but what I wanted to say, why I focus on design, and that brings me to things like what you mentioned, Benveni, with comfort. Comfort also comes with, like when Apple went fully squared on like the iPhone 12, 13, 14, right? I wasn't a huge fan of that. I was to a large degree saying, it's not gonna be like terrible, right? But it's gonna feel probably more comfortable with a case on, right? Than just with the naked touch. And similar with the use of stainless steel. It's not, obviously stainless steel is a very premium material. It's very durable. It feels hefty. But it also made devices with not the largest batteries out there, right? We just looked up the battery capacity list of previous iPhone Pro Maxes, right? None of them was even like 4,500 before the 16 Pro Max. And obviously the 16 Pro Max and the 15 Pro Max are titanium based. But that makes it, made those devices way heavier than they otherwise would have been. Obviously, stainless steel has some other downside versus aluminum. It's just not very good at dissipating heat. It's worse for radio frequency transparency. Now, granted, Apple also greatly improved antennas with the iPhone 12 series and beyond. But still, it has some downsides versus a theoretical aluminum iPhone. That's why I am fine with Apple potentially returning to aluminum devices for the Pro models. Yeah. And why I am pissed off at nothing and why I'm pissed off at reviewers excusing their laziness here is because we actually had companies like OnePlus, even companies like LG, like HTC, right, over the years give us a noticeably different experience, right? They had differently looking Android skins. They tried to work with some modularity, more expandability, easier battery replacement, just in general a different vibe, and being potentially pioneers when it comes to using new materials. Like, do you remember like the LG G Flex, right? That had like material memory, so even if it had like this curve. Was it the curve? I always forget which was the Flex, which was the curve between Samsung and LG, and that was cool. Now, granted, it didn't obviously succeed. It was still a gimmick for the most part, but it was a gimmick that I ascribe way more value to than I do anything that Nothing has done over the last couple of years. OnePlus, they might not have been huge innovators in every like kind of spec point, but they offered you relatively decent value because they actually did not waste money on gimmicks, including gimmicky pretty bad designs, like what Nothing is doing right now. But they also had a very lightweight and very clean looking user interface. Their Android skin, especially back before Samsung kind of got their shit together with One UI, but before that we had TouchWiz, and I greatly preferred Oppo's design over what Samsung was doing. And good. That's why I'm happy that even though, yes, Google is still not great, unfortunately, with their Tensor chips, and they've lost some camera supremacy that they've had before. But guess what? I still think that Google is a worthy pursuer of hardware. Again, and I'm not specifically pointing out Nothing. I will say there are some other Chinese brands, even some of the bigger ones, unfortunately, they just too blatantly copy and steal from Apple, for example. But I still see some of the value in them in a way that I don't, unfortunately, see when it comes to Nothing. And that's why I'm so covering them in this way, and why I'm covering reviewers, right, who do give them too much benefit of the doubt. Jesus, am I actually gonna, like, get super far in this? Like, to me, it's nothing new to finish a level, obviously, but I'm not sure if I've ever finished this one, because it's not my favorite. It very quickly puts you into a very small space. I'm just gonna clean up for a second, or I might get destroyed. By the way, guys, let me know. Do you prefer me playing this with some sound on, or just killing the sound altogether? Because I've seen different streamers do that differently. Now, I know I'm not going to become a gaming streamer, but I will cover the occasional Mac app, right? So I even labeled this stream as like the Mac gaming stream, but it's probably like just the Vampire Survivors and just this one level. But yeah, I'm actually really interested. I have almost my favorite power setup. That's not too bad. I am missing the proper shield that I like. So I'm missing garlic, basically. And I'm missing that flashlight-like power, which I always forget what its name is. Oh yeah, Gates of Gaia. Or Gaia. But written very differently. So I don't assume they just wanted to put the word almost gay in there from the sound of it. But yeah. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm just talking just to also give some coverage while I'm playing the game, though that is part of it. But I just do not like where we have gotten to, unfortunately, with some stuff. I feel like that people have talked so long about form over function for Apple, right? But now they're saying nothing while that's happening with, even with Samsung, by the way. Like, I will get later to the battery capacity of the Galaxy S26 Ultra, but spoiler, if you know the battery capacity of the S25 Ultra and the S21 Ultra and the S22 Ultra and the S23 Ultra, you know the battery capacity of the Galaxy S26 Ultra. And supposedly Samsung might be using actually a higher density battery, and but they don't give you more capacity just so they can use a thinner battery, make the device thinner, put it under 8 millimeters, still retain the S Pen, right? And people are not calling them out enough for that, right? I've seen, and some people have said, like, well, how much more capacity can they put, right? Like, we just in the stream, we talked about this, like, 5200 milliamp hour limit or something like that, right? You still can make, by the way, smartphones with higher battery capacity than that. It just becomes a different story and how you ship them, and yeah, it's basically more expensive regulatory wise. Benvin is saying you got the flu in summer. There's nothing worse than that. Yeah, if you're like losing time when it's actually nice outside, I know what you mean. I wasn't feeling too well yesterday, but that's probably because the other day it was actually 36 degrees Celsius, and from that I was constantly under air conditioning at work, and then at home I have like my water-based fan, right? So it's basically a cooler, but a very primitive one, because again, I'm not building in air conditioning into my rented apartment. And I wasn't feeling too well, so I assume maybe I thought I have gotten a cold maybe from that, but seems like I'm feeling pretty good today. Apple changed much more in the last 3 years than Samsung, and I haven't seen anyone say about Samsung. Exactly, but that's also partially okay, right? That doesn't mean Samsung deserves to be shit on, in my opinion. In my opinion, it just means Apple should be getting more praise than they are, at least versus Samsung, right? You can argue like versus Xiaomi or versus Vivo or whatever, right? And they're like 6,000 plus milliampere hour batteries. But overall, I would argue that versus Samsung, especially like in terms of cameras, right? Like, sure, Samsung also has updated like whatever 12 megapixels they had to mostly 50 megapixels, or they have like their 200 megapixel main camera, but they don't really leverage any of that, and the sensor size is not even very impressive. Even versus Apple, which Apple and Google are notoriously more conservative with sensor sizes because they prioritize computational photography. But then versus Android competition with full 1-inch sensors and like roughly like 3 times larger, almost like telephoto sensors sometimes, especially versus like that garbage 3x 10 megapixel sensor that they're keeping around. Yeah, I absolutely believe that. Maybe it's not that Samsung has gotten bad, but I think that at that point you should acknowledge, well, Apple has then contributed more innovation in the last few years. And especially considering the ecosystem arguments, I think people are just forgetting with Apple Silicon. First of all, the Apple Silicon transition, I just rewatched the introduction of it. That was less than 5 years ago, right? And less than 4 years ago, we actually got the M Pro and M Max chips, right? So there is so much that is still happening in the world of Apple, including all the stuff where iPhones get integrated with that, right? Like if you're not in the European Union, for example, you can stream your entire iPhone to the Mac with basically no effort whatsoever. Apple knows how to treat their customers, at least here in the UK. Yeah, there's also obviously the geographic argument that if you are in the English-speaking world, or if you are English-speaking, or at least you live in a very developed economy like Germany or most parts of Europe, you are getting more benefits, of course, on iPhone. So this is why I've also said I am fine with Apple not being as highly regarded in China, for example. Like, even Europe gets some trash rollouts of Apple features, right? But then you look at China and it's even worse over there. So yeah, you can see it how you like. Damn, am I actually gonna get this level to the end? I'm not actually even sure if I ever found the tomb of this level. Also, by the way, just in general, Apple has been, in my opinion, doing a lot of stuff. Just they have some stuff that they keep doing the same, right? It's there, for example, their 256. Oh my god, God side. I actually switched to German for a second. Thank God I actually clicked on it. Jesus, this is going. Actually, not sure if I'll be able to speak during it. But I would argue that the pricing of most Apple gadgets, especially for the base versions, has been pretty good in the last couple of years. I mean, sure, is it going to be groundbreaking? No. Are they going to move any time away from their like stupid 8 gigabytes of more RAM is $200, 256 gigabytes of more storage is $200? Probably not, but that's also where they actually are greedy, right? With the base models, like I would argue that the S25 Ultra does not offer enough to be more expensive than the iPhone 15 Pro Max. If it was better and had the S Pen, yes, that would be enough for me. But it's not better. It's roughly the same in some scenarios, right? If you ignore like all the ecosystem stuff, right? But like, sure, it has more memory, but then again, it runs a much more memory-intensive user interface. It has slower USB-C speeds, right? It's 5 gigabits rather than 10, as far as I know. The cameras, really, the main camera is worse. The zoom camera is better in good lighting conditions, but then way worse in poor lighting conditions. What else is there? The screen is 8-bit rather than 10-bit, and while it does have a superior anti-reflective coating, I'll fully admit that, it does have noticeably lower peak brightness. It also has poor HDR handling. No matter what 3000 nits of brightness Samsung might be promising, or I believe the Nothing Phone 3 is promising 4500 nits of brightness. Just so you know how insane it's getting with certain metrics. I know OnePlus does the same, and it's obviously not true. Some of these phones struggle to reach 1400 nits of full screen brightness, but it's still funny. Benveni, how the F are you not the #1 chatter yet? You have said so much more than Riley at this point. When bro have so much knowledge about tech, they can play and do live stream without a problem. Well, I mean, ask me some questions, right? Like, challenge me, actually. Ask me something about NVIDIA hardware or AMD, something recent, right? Challenge me on consoles, or challenge me on the gaming landscape in general. Yeah, this is actually fun. I should have done this more often. My mom is actually visiting today, but she's arriving at midnight. And by the way, I believe I've said in the beginning of the stream, but I don't think all of you were there when I said it. Yeah, this is multitasking. This is 8 gigabytes of hyper-optimized memory up there. Jesus, am I only left with pentagrams? Oh, I didn't even notice that I've upgraded basically everything to the max. But my mom is visiting me late tonight, literally like midnight, for the weekend. And the reason why I'm most likely not covering the Galaxy Z Flip and Fold 7 event next week, is because a friend of mine is coming over from England and crashing at my place for 2 days. So I don't want to be streaming when she's here. Don't know, maybe that seems a bit too nerdy. Nerd World asking, do I have Windows PCs as well? I actually don't own any Windows hardware anymore. I used to have like Windows-based laptops. Yeah, used to have it, but not simultaneously. But when I got my first Mac with the late 2012 iMac, right? So that was the i7 version, and I believe it was the NVIDIA 680MX with 2 gigabytes. So that was a pretty high-end one. But then very quickly, my main computer actually became my iPad Air. By the time Apple introduced the A7 chip, if you remember, it was actually the A8X iPad Air 2nd generation that introduced proper multitasking. The 1st gen iPad Air with the A7 and only 1 gigs of RAM only got what was it? Slide over, right? It didn't get full-on split-screen multitasking. But yeah, basically by that point, which what would it be? 2015? No, 2013 at first, and then across in 2015, I then got the A9X based iPad Pro. So the first 13-inch iPad with 4 gigabytes of memory, and after that, I stopped owning Windows hardware. So that's basically my story. Ben Winnie, what are your thoughts on next-gen console? I heard the Xbox want to have more store in the Xbox console. Yeah, it will basically be Windows in most ways. It will boot up, from what I understand, basically in a very lightweight version of Windows. So that's what they're also now trying out for their handheld, right? So it will basically save like 2 gigabytes of memory versus using like standard Windows. But it will still give you access to other storefronts. And my assumption is, from what I understand right now, is it will also give you like full-on desktop Windows. Because otherwise it will actually be difficult unless they partner directly with Valve to bring Steam as like an app on the Xbox store. I don't think they're going to be doing that. So yeah, that's my thought. As for the hardware it will use, it will most likely just be, I mean, they already announced a partnership with AMD, right? But it will probably just be a Zen 6-ish CPU. Depends a little bit on when it's coming out. Some people say 2027. Could be as early as late 2026. If it's coming 2026, it could actually be Zen 5 based, which wouldn't be great because Zen 5, while a lot better than Zen 2 in current consoles, is barely better than Zen 4, especially if you're not using 3D cache, which Sony is actually rumored to be using some kind of extra cache die, similar to what AMD does on their 3D Vcache CPUs. But I'm not sure if that's been rumored in any way for the next Xbox. Yeah, in general, I'm not very excited about Xbox. I mean, did you guys see all the stuff about Microsoft laying off 9,000 people, about the initiative being shut down? That's the quadruple A studio that Xbox founded like 9 years ago. Oh no, I'm actually gonna lose. Oh, do I have a tiramisu for revival? Oh yeah, thank God. Wait, but I don't actually think I can. No, I should have eaten the chicken. No, I'm gonna die. The Xbox derailed me. The Xbox kills something again, and it's my game. A Nerdworld saying, I would suggest to make one custom-built Windows PC. The experience build it from scratch is lovely. I like DIY. I actually have one more revive. Whew, I'm actually gonna breathe in and out before I do that. I actually help friends with do-it-yourself build stuff. And things like that. To me, the problem is that I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. I like getting really great hardware up front and then not having to care about it for the next couple of years. So that's a little bit what's happening with my M1 Max MacBook Pro, which I believe was like, when I bought it, I was still a student. So it was like around 3,600 in euros. That includes a 19% value-added tax. And it came down by 10%. So around 3,300 was like my final price. If I do that with a PC, I'll end up with a RTX 6090, AMD 10. What are we? The 9800X 3D, so it would be like the 10800X 3D, and I just would spend too much money. I actually had 2 console, PS5 and Xbox Series X, but I sold both to buy PS5 Pro. That's a glorious decision. I gave my OG PS5 to my nieces, which basically means it's in their living room, which means their dad plays it most. But yeah, I myself play on my PS5 Pro. the problem is what Nerdworld. What would I do with a $1,000 PC that I don't do? Don't forget, I already have a big gaming library on my PlayStation. In fact, it's a digital gaming library, right? So I cannot sell those games. Not that I even want to, right? I did it all with the full understanding of that I'm getting deep into the ecosystem. Nvidia with AMD CPU, best combo right now, yeah. 5070 Ti, well, 5070 Ti is literally worse than the 5080, of course, but I do understand what you mean. It's $200 less expensive, so by MSRP. I would argue, though, that the 9700 XT has been pretty great. I think I lost it. Oh, I still have one revive. Jesus. How many revives did I... Actually, 10% faster. That might be the best thing for me to collect right now. And I'll need to activate the train 2 times. Once. Come on. Kill them. 2 times. Give me more train. Give me more train. Sorry, guys. But like, if I buy a Windows-based thing, I honestly think... Oh, okay, I finally lost. Oh, a new achievement. Deal a total of 25,120 damage with the laboratory train. Good to know that that was an achievement. You can make YouTube content out of that custom-built PC, like comparing Mac. Yeah, that's true. The reason why I'm countering this is not actually that I have an aversion against having anything Windows-related. And yeah, I will be playing GTA 6, obviously, on my PS5 Pro. But where was it, actually? Where was it? Was it Asus? Ryzen AI Max plus 395. So if I get into like the Windows space, I would probably be more interested in something like this, which has like an APU. Now, of course, some might say, well, that's a lot of the experience you already have with your Macs and stuff. But I just very much value portability. I go out a lot into the park. I read, like I've been recently rereading Aragon, right? And I've been reading a lot of medical stuff for some scientific work I'm doing. And so to me, portability very much matters. And I would be willing to pay good dollar, but I would probably not doing with anything in the current generation. Legion Go 5. That's not the highest end, right? It does go like... Oh, wait, yeah, Legion Go, sorry. Yeah, I know about all of these things. I know about the Legion Go S, which is like the Linux version of it, right? The SteamOS version. So that's the first partner device by Valve. Well, the Steam Deck is not partnered, right? Legion 5. Sorry. Yeah, my brain malfunctions for some reason. Yeah, simple Legion 5. Thinner, lighter, better. I mean, guys, we can check out the review by Dave2D.
Once in a while, you'll find a company who's so confident in a product they've made that they will sponsor a video.
Yeah, nerd, I'm getting your... Never forget, guys, you are in a slight delay with the chat. I have tried tuning that, but I don't know why.
Without any requirement. No script, no talking points, nothing. They just send you the product and they say, just talk about it however you will, because they know they have a banger. And this is one of those products. This is the new Lenovo Legion.
Okay, this looks either like a 16:9 or 16:10 inch screen. I mean, for gaming, that's probably the best. I would prefer something closer to a 3:2, or like what Apple does, right? Apple's screen is 16:10, but instead of having this weird notch, Apple has a weird notch, but that actually gives you more screen. Did it get released how long ago? Well, the latest version is new. Bro, your $1,000 pounds can't run Death Stranding 2 and Ghost of Yote? Yeah, but not just because they're exclusive. Like the 90... What's the price of the 9700 non-XT, right? Because we are going to be nice here. We don't need the... but like 9700. So I don't recommend anyone getting an older... that's 9700X. No, wait. What's the GPU name? It's the XT. right? Wait, is it the XT and the XTX? They call this? No way. Did they call the mid-range version an XT and an XTX? No. No, oh, thank God, there's no XTX. Wait, but then it's just, it's 9070. It's 9070, not 90. Why? My brain just fully malfunctioned on CPUs. So the 9070 is $700. So it costs about as much as a PS5 Pro by itself. But it's yeah, I know. But I am trying to fit it into a $1,000 PC, nerd. Believe me, when it comes to PC hardware, I'm also an NVIDIA guy. However, the 5070 Ti that you recommended, just to show you something, the 5070 Ti, I believe here in Germany right now is $900, except for some devices that are basically on clearance. Okay, seems like it has gotten a bit down, but you can see that here the 9070 XT is sub $700. The 5070 Ti is roughly $800. So for the money that you've suggested, I'm getting the GPU and the motherboard. I'm not getting a case. I'm not getting a CPU. I'm not getting the RAM. I'm not getting storage. 900 USD. Yeah, I think that's about the actual cost. Don't forget, the US is facing tariffs, even though some products are excluded, but that prevents a lot of devices right now dropping below MSRP. Here in Europe, we have actually been flooded with a lot of Chinese tech, well, which includes the things made in China, right? Like NVIDIA hardware, like AMD hardware. And because obviously these companies are trying to find new markets while the US might be a tiny bit gaga at the moment. Just making sure stream's all working. But yeah, let's keep looking at the Lenovo Legion
5. So a bit of background. For the past few years, the Legion 5 has been one of the best-selling gaming laptops in its class.
Guys, we've been streaming for almost 2 hours. I just wanted to give the usual shout-out for you, if you haven't yet done so, to do the YouTube jazz, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, super chatting, channel member making, Patreon subscribing, all that stuff. Yeah, maybe 3K is the sweet spot, not 1K. I think you can make something for 2K. I think you can make it. But yeah, 1K is definitely not gonna be any experience that I would value over an already very good laptop and a very nice working PS5 Pro.
Because it's just a really good product.
Don't forget, my PS5 Pro already actually has a 2 terabyte SSD inside. Now that SSD, when I bought it, which is the Fire CUDA 530, that was the fastest and highest IOP NVMe 4x4 drive when I bought my PS5. I believe that was somewhere between $300 and $400. So my PS5 Pro setup by itself, considering that it's $800 because it's 19% value added tax here in Europe. I have 2 controllers, right? Now, granted, that they actually came bundled with my PS5 because out of everyone, I actually found a carrier deal for a friend of the family, and that carrier deal included a PS5 with 2 controllers. That was during the shortages, when it was actually impossible to find a non-scalp PS5, but somehow Germany's O2 randomly had PS5s. So I came to that person, offered to pay that part of basically the deal, and yeah, that's how I got my PS5 with 2 controllers, and now I have 2 controllers with my PS5 Pro.
A really reasonable price. But it hasn't always been that way. Lenovo's early laptops, like 2019 and before, were terrible. They were just really hot and not good products. But since 2019, they figured out how to cool these things properly, and this whole product line has been like universally recommended by reviewers because they're just really good value. Now this year, the Legion 5 has been completely redesigned.
Okay, so there are a few things that already about it that I don't like. Like, I don't like that it has this hump on the back, so it doesn't like I would just like that extra space to be used for more screen. I know they use it for more ventilation, everything like that, but it's still a bit
It's lighter, it's quieter, it performs better.
Okay, so it already has not the it is pretty thick though. I don't have a problem with that though. If the product is well constructed, I'm very much accepting of some extra thickness. I assume you can probably configure the CPU here. Now, this is my problem with current generation laptops and well, almost all PC hardware. Both of these parts are TSMC 4 nanometer, right? When was 5 nanometer originally introduced by Apple? In late 2020, right? The A14 chip and the M-class series of processors. We are now in 2025, and devices that cost well beyond 2, often well beyond 3, and sometimes around 4 grand still come exclusively, even on the absolute high end, with basically 5 nanometer class chips. Sure, it's a refined 5 nanometer. Plus, again, even the AI7 350, which consists of some P cores and some Zen 5C E cores, basically, it will give me decent efficiency. Then again, that efficiency will be eaten up by the existence of the 5070 unless I basically disable it for most of the use cases and manually enable it for games. But the 350 will be in so many ways inferior to my M1 Max, right? And especially you have to understand, like in business terms, we're looking at like opportunity cost, right? Money that I spend on this is money that I'm most likely not spending on a fully M5 maxed out, and my upgrade path is probably around the M6, probably around the M7 generation. I'm really waiting for tandem OLED and stuff like that. But yeah, this CPU is not even really better than what I already have. And sure, the GPU is going to be faster than my M1 Max GPU, but it's going to come at a way higher power consumption.
Better, all while being more compact. And I think a lot of these characteristics make it quite appealing to students because this is the entry-level Legion product from Lenovo.
Okay, so there is like a Legion 7, right? Like a more premium.
The kind of value point for this product stack. So this year it's changed a lot. And the first thing I want to...
I think I know this product. Is that the one that still has like a nice 2880 by 1800 OLED screen?
Your attention to is its size. This is not a typical laptop size. This actually is a 15-inch laptop in a space that's dominated by 16
no, so I don't know this one.
and 14-inch devices. This is relatively unique, and it's a device that fits in most backpacks, which a lot of 16-inch devices don't. And it's also quite thin. It comes in at around 20, maybe 21 millimeters thick.
It's not very thick is how I would describe a product like this.
It's under 2 kilograms. There's 2 USB-C, 3 USB-A.
Why? Benveni, you probably can feel my pain here. Why waste 3 USB-A? Jesus Christ, why waste that? I know that some people will say, well, you use a mouse potentially with like a wireless adapter and then you have like USB flash. We are literally never moving on at this point. If a device like this can have fewer USB-C ports than USB-A port, look, I know why they do this for that market, but literally nothing then pushes the industry forward. We're gonna be stuck with still putting in USB 3.2 by 2 because yes, that branding somehow exists on this planet. USB-A ports into devices in 2030 and 2035.
But there is no SD card reader on this device, unfortunately.
Wait, guys, who's
now
the
on the back
number
you still have your
one
power
yapper at this
connection and your
moment?
HDMI connection. So if you have
How
this
is
thing connected
Riley
up to like
still
a
the
more
number
permanent
one
desk
yapper?
setup, all your important
Nerdworld and
cables run
Benveni,
at
you're
back, so it's a
both
little
on
bit
the
cleaner.
exact same
Now,
level
the
at
screen,
150.
this is a 15.1-inch OLED panel that is a 16 by 10 aspect ratio. I actually can't think of many other devices that have a panel like this. It's actually kind of rare. So you have a fast display with
it's 16 by 10. It does look nice. The bezels are thickish, so I would probably go with like the Legion 7 for myself. I also don't like numpads. I prefer devices that are just the keyboard. I don't use numbers that much.
colors, good brightness. It is a glossy panel though.
Which is great. The best screens are with glossy panels but anti-reflective coatings.
OLED is just like your typical glossy finish on the OLED screen. You can see it in the reflection, but There are other options from what I understand. I think there's an IPS panel that they offer for lower configurations, but the OLED one is the only one I've been able to see. The keyboard on the Legion 5 is a true strike keyboard.
Okay, so
one thing that they're
talks
doing is
about
running a
some AI
hyperchamber,
stuff.
so this is
I don't care
in their
about
new
upgrading
Legion
it too
Space
much.
app.
I would probably
Now,
just
in order
give
to
it
keep
more storage.
water, that is a 140
Laptop GPU power scaling, yeah.
watt GPU in order to take full
But
advantage
now
of
who's
it.
going to be the
This,
one? It's
the
Nerd
5070
World.
is
Yeah,
115.
it's
So
weird.
if you're going to put a
I
5070
think
Ti
Ben Vinny,
in the
if you
system,
yap a bit
you either
more,
have to make
you'll
it thicker
be,
or the fans have to be
number one,
way
but
louder.
I'm not
But I
sure
think they
if
wanted to keep the
Nerd
device
World is still
thinner
here.
and quieter for most of their customers. It's just that for the people that would have been willing to pay more for the 5070 Ti, you can't even do that on this device. Also, the 5070 Ti has 12 gigs of VRAM, which would have been awesome for this screen resolution.
Oh my god, they don't... Okay, yeah, so then it's completely worthless for me. If it ends with a GPU that only has 8 gigabytes, it's completely
1600.
worthless for me. Yeah, I would never buy anything with less than 12 gigs of RAM at this point. Benvini, you previously mentioned some Tailosive Tech stuff. I mean, I can briefly... Next
You know, the
year's-
more I-
Oh, it's a 6-minute video. Yeah, we can briefly check this out. And then I think I'll slowly be wrapping it up just so I can clean my apartment a bit before my mom comes home.
Think and ponder about the iPhone 17 lineup, one singular word keeps coming to my mind, and that's
Really? I actually, I think this is one of the least one single word lineups ever.
singular word.
Oh my god, he's gonna call it boring or something like that, right?
Is
Oh
boring.
my god, he's such a moron.
I'm sorry, I know we're supposed to...
Benveni, there was no pre-watch here. I just guess, I was like, will he say thin? Will he say redesign? Will he say camera? Will he say maybe even something like silly for the new camera bar? Boring. Jesus Christ.
be excited that there's a thinner iPhone again, but
I mean, you don't have to buy the thinner iPhone. You can literally get the iPhone with the largest. This is the problem with guys who don't actually walk around and run around a lot for their job. I know he got this advertisement job for Telo trucks, but and he does have to do some on-site shooting there and whatever, but he still spends most of the time in his office. Nerd World still looks like you're number 2 and Benveni is number 3. But I think you're both super close to Riley. I think Riley's still collecting points for just being Benveni. Yeah, you're happy. You're happy that I'm stressing, but do I see a super chat from you? Do I see become you a channel member? No. Just yapping about and stressing me out.
to me, the iPhone 17 Air, while that's probably going to be the star of the show for a couple of months,
Oh my god. It's going to be the star for the media. It's not going to be the star for the... It shouldn't be the star for you. You should actually be covering it, maybe even in a negative way. Oh, it's way too little battery life for most people. Oh, it has only one camera, right? All the downs. Oh, my biggest downside. Oh, it doesn't have stereo speakers. You shouldn't be excusing it. Why am I more critical of the iPhone Air than you are when you call the entire lineup boring?
probably even review one on this channel because it is new and different. Still, the more I
You
think...
should also be reviewing products so that people know what to buy. The point of a review is not just content. This is why I on this channel do not go out and buy stuff to review for you guys, because I know that I'm not the best at it. I don't edit it. I'm a live streamer, sorry, I guess. But man, it's so much in my brain. It's like, I think I'm having an aneurysm.
Think about it, it's basically like 15 compromises for one perk. Worse
Okay.
camera, worse battery life,
Okay,
worse...
but it's realized not the only product. There are products that come with a better telephoto camera, better selfie camera, better cooling, better battery, higher sustained performance. from all of that. Even better Wi-Fi. Apple's first in-house designed Wi-Fi modem.
Worse speakers likely, all for the sake of, wow, yeah, it feels a little lighter than before. Which is why we're still going to talk about it, you know, we're still going to cover it on this channel, but the more I think about what the rumors are saying right now, the iPhone 18 series, which might not even be called that, they could move to iPhone 27, or they might just drop the numbers entirely, but I do think next year is going to get particularly interesting.
By the way, I don't disagree that it could be more interesting next year. Especially, we're getting the Fold in 2026. We're getting glasses, some form of them, in 2027, probably, right? Or, like, of course, it's going to be, like, some years are going to be more interesting than others, but I would call this year anything but boring. Benveni, I noticed a bug with the third-party Gmail info OTP code automatically in 26. Well, in reduce interruptions mode. Yeah, maybe, but again, we are in beta too. I would actually say for this kind of specific bug, actually write the feedback. It might actually be too small for Apple to know otherwise, right? But that's my issue that I have with people over-focusing on something like, oh, the control center blur, right? Yeah, Apple is going to fix that. They see that themselves, right? But when it comes to actually smaller features like this, I always encourage people to reach out and tell Apple, oh yeah, your beta is still a beta and has some issues.
Because all 4 iPhones will now be expensive, which is great. Let's begin.
We don't know that.
I wanted to kind of walk through what the current projections are. This video may age terribly, but as far as what the next year and a half...
Tell me something more about your videos, Drew.
...looks like for iPhone launches, and really just like 14 months, because we're around 60 days away now from the launch of the iPhone 7.
All of July, well, 25 days, 26 days left of July. All of August, so that's 30 days. It's not, we're not getting an event on September 5th, but yeah, September, I want to say 11th, like around September 12th-ish, 13th-ish, right? Apple avoids September 11th for good reasons. It's a release date.
17 lineup, which basically will replace the Plus model with an Air, and aside from that, things are business as usual. But then next year is when things start to change up a little bit. The current reports...
Yeah, that also makes sense. Of course, we are just 3 days away from a beta 3.
Are saying that the base model is not going to be released in September anymore. But they are still saying...
Oh, that's what he meant. All of them are going to be expensive. Yeah, so supposedly the iPhone 18 lineup will first release with the iPhone 18 Air, 18 Pro and Pro Max, and 18 Fold, and then the iPhone 18 nothing, the iPhone 18 base model, and the 18e will come out together in March or April of 2027 instead.
4 new iPhones are going to launch next year. The cheapest one is going to be the iPhone 18, or whatever it's called, Air, alongside 18 Pro, 18 Pro Max, and then the real new kid on the block. Still don't know the naming scheme, of course, for this one.
I call it iPhone Fold. I don't think that's actually going to be the name. I think iPhone Ultra could be a decent name. We have Ultra naming for... not even the maxed out chips, because that's the max, but for a very special version of those chips, right? It's not actually a bigger chip by itself than the M Max. It's just 2 M Maxes combined. The Apple Watch Ultra, it's not like better in absolutely every way. Like, it doesn't have a special processor or something like that, but it does benefit just from being larger. A bigger battery and everything else like that. So I think iPhone Ultra would work here.
And it could be iPhone Fold, it could be iFold, it could be
It's not gonna be iFold.
iPad mini, but yes,
it's not.
After all these years, Apple is reportedly finally actually moving forward.
I remember back in the day, I actually used those for my thumbnails like a year ago or so, when Min-Chi Kuo was like promising that the iPhone Fold. I remember actually using it even way before that. Yeah, at that point the iPhone Fold was always 2 years away, no matter what year it was.
Forward with a foldable device, and I absolutely cannot wait to hear the marketing team tell us why we should care about foldables after all this time.
Well, because they will reduce the crease, they will improve durability, they will use battery technology that is more in line with silicon carbon, so you don't get a thick fold that's uncomfortable or a thin fold with terrible battery. That it will also inherit better cooling technology from the iPhone. So even in a slim form factor, it will still give you good sustained performance. And it will, it will get all the goodies of displays like LTPO, 10-bit, ProMotion, of course, but some of that is not too new at this point. They could have done a fold with like iPhone 13 Pro level displays for all I care, as long as the crease is small. They have enough computational photography prowess to, even with a somewhat smaller dual camera setup, give you some of the experience you would most associate with like a tri-camera setup. There's plenty of reasons to wait.
All jokes being aside, yes, Apple is very late to this segment, but I do expect them to probably have the best software of any foldable out there, and Apple usually is pretty good at making devices.
I expect it to mostly have the multitasking software that was introduced with iPadOS 26. I think that's about where you should expect it to be, maybe with some specific flourishes for that form factor, right? Like you have the small app on like your outer screen, but when you unfold it, it immediately jumps into full screen mode on that internal screen.
Feel pretty high quality and premium. Definitely don't expect the foldable iPhone to be cheap.
No, I expect it to be roughly $2,000. I've seen some people say like 2,500. I would find it weird if it was over double the base price of the iPhone Pro Max. I mean, it could be, but I would see somewhere between 1,800 and 2,200, depending on the actual hardware, of course, inside. We don't know everything about it yet.
Thinking $2,000 at least could easily become a $2,500 Apple product with storage options.
Yeah, with storage options, I actually agree. Yeah, I think it will most likely start with 512 gigabytes, just to make a differentiation from the Pro Max devices that I still think will start with 256 for the foreseeable future. And I think that they will then still upgrade it to 1 terabyte, which right now is $200. And if they put in a 2 terabyte option in there, with a base start of 2,000, that would end up being 2,600 overall.
Maybe pencil accessories if they
but that's not the product.
Tried to go that route, but my personal prediction, I could be wrong, but I think Apple tends to like some naming consistency, at least a little bit. You know, we've got M4.
Show me you actually have some brains in there still left. The old Apple sheep stuff.
M4 Pro, M4 Max, and M4 Ultra. We've had Apple Watch, Series 9, Series 10, and also Apple Watch Ultra. Now even CarPlay Ultra is in the mix for some reason.
Oh, yeah,
but
true.
Something about that Ultra naming seems to be working for them fairly well. They like using that. So my guess, considering they already have Pro and Pro Max used in the iPhone naming scheme, is that the folding iPhone will be the first generation iPhone Ultra.
Yep.
And they'll consider it an Ultra feature because it has, a pretty decent display on the outside, but you can unfold it and have kind of a mini iPad on the
all of that is correct
inside that maybe allows for some actual split screen multitasking functionality that you just straight up.
It's important to note, I don't think Drew is actually an idiot. I think when I call Drew a moron, it's because it's in situations where I know he is being not fully honest in like how bored he is of the 17th generation.
Couldn't really get to work reliably on regular iPhones, and personally, as expensive and maybe as niche as the folding iPhone sounds, I'm excited about it the more I think about it. Not because I think it's necessarily going to be the best buy or something everybody should get, but it's a lot more interesting technologically for the iPhone line, and I think there's a lot more benefits that outweigh the compromises. Of course, the compromise being it's expensive. Yes, there might be some questions and some concerns when it comes to the durability, but I think Samsung and other folding phones out there have proven that these phones can be reliable. They don't fall apart after just a couple of years of ownership, and Apple appearingly even has found a way to somewhat eliminate the crease.
Why are you capable of mentioning all of that, but still show like some of these obvious signs of like dislike and exasperation at Apple when you know they're working on good stuff?
Which I didn't even find to be that big of a deal.
Then why don't you buy yourself a foldable phone at that point? Review it for your channel. Switch for all I care. Angelica joining the stream. At least one of our MarkTech Pro Max members this year. Usually we get at least two. Where are Max? Where is Steve? Where is Jonathan?
I reviewed folding phones in the past, and
But
I'm
yeah,
not
Angelica,
even saying
thank you
on this
so much
video
for
that I
joining.
would
I
definitely
will be
buy
wrapping
an
up soon. It's almost been 2.5 hours, man.
iPhone Ultra, but I just think the iPhone line is in desperate need of a change-up, a mix-up a little bit, because the stovetop cameras have been the same for many years, and we've just been staring at kind of the same glass rectangles with...
Yeah, okay, yeah. So now he's just being obtuse. Like, that's not even true. We got new materials. We got a smoother body with the 15 Pro. We got noticeably lighter devices with the 15 series, with the 15 Pros. We got everything from the notch to the different notch to the dynamic island to some of the slimmest bezel in any consumer hardware available.
Slightly thinner bezels for so long. I'm ready for a big change up, and I don't know about you guys, but the folding iPhone concept where we can have a mini iPad with an OLED display and still have a great camera that can fit in our pocket, that, I don't know, gets me a bit more excited than just, wow, this phone is lighter, and we just took out the battery, the cameras, and the speakers to do so, which is kind of what we're getting this year. Next year, I personally think it's going to be a bit more interesting. Honestly, might be even a little more interesting than this 20th anniversary iPhone that's supposed to come out in 2 years. I think it's probably getting way too much hype these days. Everyone.
I kind of agree with that because I don't think the redesign will be as huge as some of these shows. Yeah, and of course the folding phone is more interesting than an Air. He's making this like some big revelation for him, right? Like you realize that just cannot be happening every year. What will happen then after 2027, right? So we're getting the Fold in 2026, a redesign in 2027. So what will happen 2028 and forward when a redesign is likely that, like a redesign of the redesign is like another 5 years away at that point. DOS was redesigned, and that's like a design that's going to stick around for the next decade. And the Fold is most likely just going to get somewhat regular upgrades. Will Drew be like disheartened by that? Will he get bored again, even though hardware keeps improving, keeps getting better for the consumer? He probably will send something to complain. Yeah, Drew will find something to complain. Don't worry about that.
It's just assuming somehow Apple will miraculously cover the entire phone with pixels, which isn't even a good idea, and maybe the camera goes underneath the display.
Like, the rumor is that it will be glass all around. It doesn't mean it will be screen all around.
Which is like, wow, look at this crazy technology. But honestly, in their day-to-day life, I don't think the camera being underneath the display makes that big a difference on how we use our phones. But
you are literally one of the people who complains, not about the dynamic island necessarily, but like that we don't get that many big changes. What do you think are the changes that are left for that rectangular form factor? Where is that same like disdain for the state of laptops? That, oh my god, it's a clamshell. You open, you close it, there is a screen, a keyboard, and a trackpad. Oh my god, laptops are doomed.
Maybe if we have the option of folding up our phone, fitting it in our pocket, but still having a big screen that can do multiple apps simultaneously, maybe you won't need an iPad anymore when that phone comes out. I don't know, that sounds slightly more interesting to me as far as this lineup goes. It'll be the first foldable with iMessage, and that in itself will probably turn it into the best-selling foldable in the world, even though it's
now
like,
he got me.
the
Ben
last
Vinny, you are
one
now
to the
number
party.
2.
Everyone's going to be mocking Apple for being
now,
late, but statistically
one-to-one
speaking,
with
Apple
Riley.
is rarely first
Riley's
to
just
anything.
getting points for being first, I guess. So if you keep up the yapping for the next 4 minutes that I still plan on streaming, you'll win.
And usually they get the execution the best, at least when they're working properly. But who knows, in this present day, modern day Apple, maybe they'll find a way to screw up a foldable.
Like, he's
but
always
feel free to let me know how
complaining
you
that
guys
things
feel
don't change,
about this
Yeah, there is no logical consistency here, is there?
year's rumored iPhones versus next year's. Which one's more exciting to you? Does that next year iPhone launch make you more interested in skipping this year's iPhones to save up a little bit more? All that good stuff.
Also, by the way, when that iPhone comes out and is super expensive, he will talk about like how it's not worth it. Like, he's talked about numerous features not being not worth it in recent years. But suddenly the Fold is going to be that. Yeah, Benveni, you're now the #1 yapper. It's like the scene from Captain Phillips, right? Look at me. I'm the yapper now. But to close it all off, because we talked about exciting technology and less exciting technology, the Galaxy S26 Ultra got some specs leaked. This is, I believe, is coming from Ice Universe on Twitter. Is it? Yeah, Phone Art Arts Universe. So supposedly it's keeping the same 5,000 milliampere hour battery, but probably in a thinner form factor. So whatever that means. Yeah, Riley's probably sleeping. I don't think you would have been able to win otherwise, Ben Winnie. I'll acknowledge that. And it's also rumored to keep roughly the same sensors with 200 megapixels. Probably a slightly refined version of that sensor, but probably about the same size. And now that all sensors, except for that terrible 10 megapixel 3x camera, are all 50 megapixel, there isn't that much rumors about those changing too much either. There's been some rumors that we might see bigger camera changes by like the S28 Ultra, but honestly, that now we're gonna be Drew and gonna be discussing like how exciting next year's or next year's lineup will be. I don't want to lead this channel to this, but and this is one thing that might happen at the Unpacked event next week. Might be a glimpse into the product, but we are getting some rumors about Samsung's trifold. So basically a double foldable, but one that effectively gives you 3 parts of the device. And we even have some leaked animations for it inside the One UI 8 beta. Let's see how it looks. So it's a long one for some reason. So this is how it's going to look. Basically pretty wide screen when fully unfolded. Is that all? Jesus Christ, that's a terribly long animation for it. Okay, and then it just restarts. So this is how it looks fully unfolded. That's obviously from the back. Now it's important, it still has a front screen, so that actually differentiates it, I believe, from something like the Huawei trifold. Riley, you woke up and you are begrudgingly typing as your title of biggest yapper has been taken away for once. Oh no, and Riley overtakes Benveni with just 2 extra chats. Jesus. Then we have this, which what is even this? Why is it? Oh, is it just the? Oh, and by the way, this also goes in line with the Galaxy Z Fold rumors, which is that Samsung is returning to a regular cutout on the internal screen. So right now it's a terrible under-display camera, but supposedly the Z Fold and seemingly the trifold is also gonna have like a regular cutout. And yeah, then we actually have a decent showing for it. So even with the full, like now with tablet widescreen style UI, still a camera and phone shortcuts, so pretty typical Samsung stuff on the front. Riley saying you were eating. Well, now you're eating the #1 spot again. But yeah, that's basically how it looks. I've put this into the thumbnail because I think that's the one that actually shows the best that this is folding. Not sure what the animation for this is. Oh, this is about folding it the wrong way, right? So basically the first one would have to go, and then this one. In fact, Samsung also has a warning animation advising users not to fold the panel with the rear cameras first, likely because the other hinge is smaller. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, but we're gonna have to see, basically. That's basically all I have to say about Samsung. Again, I'm not sure, but probably not. I will be probably not to me streaming next week's Galaxy Unpacked event, but we'll check it out. And yeah, it's going to be interesting how expensive this is, if it has any durability issues, what are its broad specs, is it just matching the Z Fold and stuff like cameras and something like that, how thin is it, because if it's a trifold and the Z Fold is like rumored to be like 4.5 millimeters, right? And roughly 9 millimeters when folded up. So this would make it roughly 13 millimeters when unfolded. It has to be $1,500 max where I live. Bro, the Z Fold is more expensive. This is gonna be $2,500 at the least. I wouldn't be surprised if it's closer to $3K at the base price. This is a niche product with expensive and for now pretty limited production line. By the way, can you look at these? Who does want to read articles in that way? Do I have my ad blocker off? Like, Jesus Christ, it's like the ads follow you. It's the same ad. It's such bullshit. Ugh. Riley saying no, it's 1100 here. Wait, which currency? Also, are you talking to me about like an older Z Fold? Because I'm talking about MSRP. But also, guys, I'll have to be wrapping this up, so I cannot be debating you at this point. To anybody who's new here, I'll be wrapping this up quickly. Let me see if there is any new stuff he's been to expect without gifts and stuff. Really? Wait, are you talking about the... Wait, what are you talking about, Riley? What dollars are you using? Z Fold 6 MSRP. Again, I'm not talking about it being reduced in price in Amazon or something like that. Canadian dollars is 2,600. Now it's 1,500 around in USD. Is there a dollar stronger than the US dollar? Yeah, you can drop it on Discord. I'll check it out later. But like, that's not the MSRP. I'm talking about MSRP. Here's like the base price of the Z Fold 7, $1,899. Actually, USD is higher seemingly. Did I forget that they increased pricing? $17.99 in pounds and $27.49 in Australian dollars. Yeah. And let me quickly check 9 to 5 Mac. There's anything new over there? No, I think that on 4th of July, most journalists are probably just taking the day off. Yeah, but thank you guys for being here. Thank you to a very lively live chat. Thank you to the positive reaction to me actually gaming for a bit. I'll actually close this to make my Mac go a tiny bit less loud with the fans. But this was very fun. I'll try to stream on Monday, on Tuesday. And for future timelines, I'll inform you. So actually connecting through Discord is great. Following me on Twitter for that kind of stuff is great. Beyond that, just hit the notification bell. That way you at least know when the next video is about to happen. Thank you. That was really, really fun. I'll see you guys next time. As always, let me know what else you would like to see me cover next. Last shout out for you to do all the YouTube jazz, but you know it already. So this is Mark Tech tuning out. In fact, you'll get Big Mark at the very end, covering up Steam and all his non-existing gaming achievement. Thank you, guys. Bye.